Excellent. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Thank you to the commenters. Like, you're live.
Right. I know. It
Hey,
always takes
Becky.
a moment. There's always a delay, and so you're not quite sure. But welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Jacqueline Carabinas, and I have the privilege of working with Heinemann PD and publishing with a variety of hats. But I'm so happy tonight to have Kristen Zimke and Katie Mutaris here. They are co-authors of Amplify and Read the World, both teachers and learners who have been exploring all of this teaching and learning with digital tools for a really long time and have a lot to share. And so I'm super excited to have them. We've done a few other Facebook Lives earlier in the spring and in the early summer. And so I'm hoping that if you're joining us for the first time, you might find those recordings to catch up on. But tonight, they're really going to help us get our bearings on what we're getting ourselves into and give us some confidence. So thank you, Katie and Kristen. I'm going to hide myself now and pass it off to you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jacqueline. Hi, everybody. Great to be here with you. Happy Tuesday. We are excited to spend some time together thinking about what's next in our COVID adventure and what we can do to support you as we go.
Yeah. Just a quick check in the comments. Can you just confirm that our sound is working? Because I saw someone posted that there was no sound. So I just want to make sure that everyone can hear us. So if you can just pop something in the comments really quick. Thank you so much for being here. We want to acknowledge and just show our gratitude for your time. We know how precious your time is. You are either in the throes of planning to get started. Okay, thank you, Becky. You are now our unofficial informer. So, we want to just thank you, and we're so grateful that you're here, and we're grateful for your time. We know that you are like either prepping or you are in the middle of it, and it is chaos, right? But it's going to be okay. We're doing this together, and hopefully we have some insights or tips to share with you that will help things. So we just want to acknowledge that. We want to acknowledge that we know how challenging this is. We are in it with you. We're in schools every day. So we're here for that. We're in it with you.
And whereas, like Katie and I are always honest and authentic with how it has been going, there have been moments when I've been so excited about like the opportunity, like this is a time that we really could change what teaching and learning looks like and go deeper with kids and think about big ideas. So like there's that excitement piece. And then there's also that piece of like, I cried a couple times last week, and that's just normal. I think there are so many new things coming about right now, but I think if I'm being really honest with myself too, I probably cried at some point in like the before, when I was getting ready for back to school and setting up my classroom and getting ready for students. So it's definitely that emotional roller coaster, but we have a couple of things that we hope will pull you along. We're here to cheer you up when you need some support and to have a PLN that's around you. And we also have resources and strategies planned to fuel you through the entire year, right? We know that we are getting started, but that there's going to be ongoing work to do. And so Katie and I are going to be sharing a number of those things later today. I think as we think about getting started, there are a couple key basics, and Katie and I talk about this all of the time, but the resources that we bring to our video conference meetings look very familiar to the resources that we bring to our mini lesson rugs or to our reading groups or to our inquiry circles or math reteaching groups. We bring those same tools, and I think that's one way that has helped me move through this next phase, is really connecting back to what looks familiar, what feels familiar. How do I get to my best practice strategies and beliefs at the core, right? So if we can keep going back to, okay, what is this? This is teaching and learning, right? We're doing lots of access to books and to text and to conversation and collaboration. That might look a little bit different in a Zoom call or a Google Meet, but we're kind of trying to hold on to some of those core practices, right, Katie?
Yes, absolutely. I think having some of those familiar tools, it soothes us, right? And
Mhm.
we know good teaching is good teaching, whether kids are in front of you or we're having to do it through this digital interface. Certainly, there are some things that transfer, and there are other things that we need to think about. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Um, but I think, Kristen, do you want to talk a little bit about the synchronous and asynchronous piece yet? Or do you want to?
Yeah, give me one thing, give me 1 second first, because I did want to talk about those familiar pieces. And just
Yeah.
really quickly, when we're coming to our video conferences, we're bringing our markers and our blank paper or chart paper, just like we always have done, right? We're going to write in front of kids. We're going to think in front of kids. We're going to hold up things to show them and get them engaged, just like we would do in a classroom setting. We're also coming to the table with our books, and whether it be a classroom read aloud or a picture book to teach a strategy, we're going to have access to abundant text around us, because if the technology falls apart, if students are having a hard time linking to an activity, we can always have a book to go back to. And that's a familiar piece. And that gets us back to our core belief that like we are readers and we are thinkers.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that holds true, especially too for like mathematics and having those
Absolutely.
hands-on manipulatives. I think one of the biggest pieces, things that we can sort out if you're looking at like, okay, what tech do I need to get sorted out? And I know that some of you watching, I have, a lot of tools in your toolbox. I know that some of you are like, oh my gosh, like where do I begin? And I think this right here is where you begin. You begin with
Right.
that camera, like Kristen said, you begin with that face-to-face connection. And then what I would say next is find a way to ensure that kids can see what you're doing. And that's going to look really different depending on what tech tools you have access to. I hate to suggest that teachers use their own stuff, because I really feel like if it's important for teaching and learning, then a district should supply it. But we're going to make do with what we can. So I do think if you have a second device you can set up as a dot camera, if you have an inexpensive document camera, those are all things that are going to be really valuable to students. And if not, that's okay too. You can just hold it up, just like Kristen was showing us earlier. Just so that students have those concrete artifacts that they're used to seeing in the classroom.
And I think those artifacts in the video, as Katie's talking about, like this is how we build relationships, right? Like we're seeing each other, we're hearing each other, we're spending time together, looking at the same things and talking about the same materials, and then having the opportunity to go back to those materials later when we can say, hold on a second, let me find that chart we made yesterday, right? And we bring out our handwritten anchor chart, or we share something with the child through a screen. That's the piece that binds us as thinkers and learners together in this classroom space, whatever that might look like for you right now. And so I think when we think about some of these key pieces, it's going back to being simple, right? And some of those simplicity elements. What do we know works with kids, and use that as the means for driving what works with kids through a screen.
Yes, all of that.
Do we want to talk about the asynchronous stuff now?
Yeah, let me go ahead and share the screen, and then Kristen, if you want to talk about that first one.
Yeah.
And then I will talk about the other one. Sorry, guys.
So I think when we're talking about these pieces of synchronous learning and asynchronous learning, we're really looking at like how we use our time and where that effort goes. When we think about this synchronous piece, this is our moment to interact. This is our moment to build relationships. And so when we think about chunking our time, those synchronous time periods are our daily SEL mini lessons, right? Where are we doing these checks for well-being? Where are we doing read alouds that connect and bind us? How are we fitting our instruction into that synchronous time together? Then we're also looking through the lens of our asynchronous teaching time. And I think about the asynchronous piece as when kids are going and doing the work, when they're applying the strategies or instruction that we taught during the synchronous piece. We know from classroom practice that like the most important time is when kids are doing the work. Yes, we have a mini lesson, then we send students off to do their work. Yes, we'll pull them back for a mid-workshop teaching point, and then we send them off to do the work. And so we're really thinking about how we can balance these two components. Many days our instruction comes from this face-to-face piece where we're having a conversation right now, but we can also capture this in an asynchronous format and say, okay, when you go into your work time, I have another little lesson that I'm going to teach you. And that's going to happen when you get to the video of me instructing you. Right? So we're layering in these opportunities for just-in-time teaching with students, whether they're on the screen in a whole group setting or whether they're off doing work on their own. And as we look at this type of work, so much of it is coming through what we know about brain-based learning and brain readiness with students. What we know from Tomlinson's work is that students younger than age 14, which is, you know, our K through 8 friends, maybe we have a couple 14-year-olds in 8th grade, but what we know is that their attention span is 5 to 10 minutes, right? And if you're working with our pre-K through 2nd graders, you know, we're lots closer to that 5-minute mark. And so we use this as a tool for planning, right? We are targeting lessons and instruction that can be chunked in that amount of time, but we also know that from time to time, our interaction pieces might go longer than that. And so we're thinking about, okay, how can we get kids in a place where we move from the passive learning to the active learning? And this is where we look to David Pearson's work on active learning, where we're thinking about how can we layer more modalities for kids to draw, write, think, speak, interact, move their body, right? Like I'm also always telling kids, like, move your body to show me that you care about something like this, because those are all pieces that we can pull together to really increase interaction and to move away from that passive learning to that engaged, thoughtful learning.
Yeah, and Kristen, I want to talk about the synchronous piece a little bit. I'm going to jump slides here for a second, because, you know, we know that a lot of districts and states are putting out mandates for the amount of time that kids need to be in synchronous learning. And so I have an inquiry, and I said this in our webinar last week. I was like, we have to approach this school year with an inquiry mindset. Everything is
so true.
This is the first time in the history of the world that this has ever happened. So no one has the exact right answer, right? We have to work together to have this inquiry. And so one of the inquiries that we're really exploring right now is this idea of, okay, synchronous is the overarching umbrella, but let's break that down a little bit.
Yes.
You know, synchronous means together. Can we come up with some different ways of being? And so two things that we're looking at right now, and I don't know if the terminology is perfect, but like this is an iteration, it's a work in progress, is the idea of engaged synchronous versus independent synchronous. So let's talk about what that means. Engaged synchronous is this right here. It's a two-way conversation. It's explicit instruction. It's the teacher demoing or modeling skills. It's small group and whole group or partner conversations, either using the whole class or utilizing breakout rooms. And it's small group collaborative work. It's any time that there's that back and forth. But that's a lot for kids to do if, for example, your district is saying you have to have your kids on a 2.5 hour Zoom call. And that is the case in places. So thinking more about this idea of independent synchronous, when we're alternating the times that we're having two-way conversation and the times that kids are off doing work independently, but still have access, right? The same way they would in the classroom. So, Zoom or Hangouts or whatever you're using shifts to the background. Maybe they can still hear you, but they can't see you. Kids are working on something independently, or they're going into breakout rooms, or they're turning off their cameras and microphones to do something independently. They can still hear the teacher, right? If the teacher wants to check in or give that micro teaching point, or pull them back in. Hey, Kristen, I need to pull you into a quick conference. We're going to pop into a breakout room, right? So it gives kids the support of having access to their peers and their teacher the same way that they would have that support in a classroom, right? They're sitting at their table team doing work independently. They can ask someone else or get help from the teacher, but there's not an expectation of this constant back and forth, or that or even worse, that the teacher feels the pressure to need to drive that entire 2.5 hours. And I understand, at the beginning of the year, we do a lot more driving than we like, but that's not where we want to end up. We're always teaching towards independence. We're always teaching towards kids having that control, right? Kristen, is there anything you want to add on to that before we look at
no, I think all of that's so true. And just, we're looking for balance, right? Just like we do with classroom instruction, we have this intense time where I say to students, all right, I'm going to need your eyes for a second because I'm about to teach you something new. Can everybody look up here? Teach that little nugget. And then we say, okay, go back to work, right? So it's about these high engagement moments, partnered and paired with time for students to do their own independent thinking. And so anytime that we think about that too, we're looking for opportunities for kids to have that break time, right? Where we get excited and then we go, and then we get excited and then we go off and do some more work, and then we come back together. So it's all these little nuggets being paired together to create a even more robust learning experience than just a straight, let me lecture you, only this time it's on a Google Meet or a Zoom call. We're creating something that's better than that.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy, and I'm going to speak from personal experience. I think with the Zoom format or the Hangouts format, it is super easy to kind of go to a lecture-y format.
Yes.
Because you don't have the body language to sort of see what's going on necessarily. And it's, kids don't necessarily want to jump in the way they would in the classroom. And so we have to think a little bit about strategies that we're going to use to inspire that engagement. So I'm going to pop to the beginning of this other graphic. You might have seen me, I tweeted this out yesterday, and then I tweeted out an amended version today where I removed all the typos because I was like fast and furious typing, and then sent it out without revision.
It happens.
You have to forgive me because the air conditioning is broken in our house. I told Kristen if I pass out during this Facebook Live to just call 911 and give
on speed dial.
But if we're thinking about engagement strategies, right? So this piece of planning with the brain in mind, and this is what Kristen was just talking about with the amount of time that kids can attend to things. We have to plan our instruction in short phases. Think about it almost like kindergarten, right? For everybody. A kindergarten teacher is never going to keep kids, and I think most primary teachers are never going to keep kids at the carpet for 30 minutes at a time, right? You have to break things up. You have to have those intentional shifts in time. So that's something to really pay attention to when you're planning. And if you can't shift the activity, because truthfully, we do want time to go deep, right? We want to explore those ideas. Then think about what strategies you're going to use to give those breaks or that interactivity. So some of those things that we might do, intentional screen breaks. Kristen was just talking about this, right?
Yep.
Because we have all the tech tools, doesn't mean we have to use all the tech tools.
Yes,
Right,
thank
Kristen? You want to
you.
talk about
Yes,
that? 'Cause
yes. And I think there is a lot of pressure, and that's what happens too when you're on a video conference the whole time. You feel that pressure. Maybe families are listening in or watching in, and now you've got this unusual audience that you never had before. But I think you also feel pressure to use the technology, right? Families have purchased devices. Maybe your school district has issued them. Maybe you wrote grants to get them. But good teaching with technology means not using technology for a portion of the time, right? So anytime we ask kids to take their pen and just real quick, you know what? As we're reading, just draw a right. What's the picture or movie you see in your mind right now? Draw a right. The moment that kids go to their paper with their pen or marker, that's a screen break for the eyes, right? That's looking away from the blue light and the intense focus to going back to a piece of paper or to something that's more familiar. And the simple act of even just drawing a picture, or we could even say to students, you know what, real quick, can you guys just write your name? And then hold it up for me to see, right? So here, I've done something. I've moved my arm in writing, and now I'm actually turning my paper and holding it up. And that's an opportunity for me to do some body or some engagement pieces, right? We can all the time. I'm a big fan. If you've seen anything that I've talked about before, I think your entire curriculum can come from a 2-column T-chart, right? Or a 3-column T-chart. This is what we use in class all the time to get kids to produce thinking, or to give them those stems for thinking, right? What did you learn? What questions do you have? I used to think, now I think, how my thinking has changed, right? We give them stems for the thinking, and then we give them an opportunity just to have blank paper to draw and write. And those are the kind of breaks that we need to build in for students across the course of our instructional time. Even little things like bringing a toy to turn and talk, with our elementary learners, right? It has to be able to fit in the screen and be smaller than your hand, right? That's a rule of thumb that I use for first grade learners. But really quickly, just take a moment and turn and talk with your toy. Right? You might not have a parent or a sibling there to turn and talk to, but you can turn and talk with your toy. And that is just that think aloud that we're training kids how to do at a young age. And if we're working with older students, we can say, you know what, just pause really quickly, mute your microphone for a second, and just have a think aloud with yourself. You can jot some ideas then, you can talk in your head, you can talk out loud, right? So giving them multiple ways to be engaging in a different format.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, any physical stuff that we're doing is so helpful, right? Everyone, like, put your hands on your head if you agree, or, write with me in the air, write on the carpet, let's stretch. We're going to transition to breakout rooms while the screen is flipping over. Stand up and spin around 3 times, just something to keep it moving.
All the time, sorry, Katie, all the time I was just going to say too, is I say, okay, so I am going to put on this little counter. I want you to take your work and move from the table to the carpet. When this little counter gets down to 0, come back, right? Because even just that language or that switch of where kids are working makes a huge boost to engagement and their ability to think a little bit deeper.
Yes, love that. Thinking about varying what students are seeing, right? So your face and your expressions, this piece is so important to kids. Also working in visuals, images, charts. This can be digital, or it can just be like chart paper, anchor chart right next to you. Using videos, using objects, all of these different components in our instruction. And this goes for live synchronous or asynchronous. This is going to mix it up. It's going to keep the brain paying attention, right? It's going to keep kids curious. We can also use digital tools for interactivity. And this is a cool thing that, Kristen and I have been talking about digital chats and back channels and for a while, but now it's really come to the forefront. Have kids respond in the chat. Now, I think a lot of teachers are worried, right, about chat and what's going to happen. So, I mean, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's address what is happening with that chat. We need to explicitly teach kids how to use it. We need to model it. We need to set up guidelines and norms for what that looks like. We need to expect that somebody's going to do something silly and use it as a teachable moment instead of freaking out and shutting the whole thing down. So I think if you roll those things out bit by bit, it will eventually get to the point where kids can use those tools fluently. So thinking about going into small groups, using that breakout room, responding in the chat, filling out a poll. If you're not using Zoom, there's other sites where kids can do that. I like Mentimeter a lot. It's kind of visual. They can do like a word cloud and it's interactive. So that piece is really neat. And then, okay, so I'm gonna quit out of that really quick. I think we lost Kristen. Kristen, are you there? Uh-oh. Well, now I have to sing a song to everyone because we lost Kristen. I don't know what happened to her. So I want to say a little bit about engagement because I think those of you that are not yet in school, I know that you're really trying to like figure it out, like what's happening, like which tools am I going to use? But for those of us who have started, what I'm saying, oh my God, you're back. I was so worried about you.
I was so worried too. The internet went out 2020, right? So if that happened with students, I would just come back in and explain exactly what happened, right? Because like these things are going to happen.
These things happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when we get the spinning beach ball and everything's running slow in the afternoon, right? We just name it for kids and we address it and just say, this is life, right? Yeah. And then it opens the opportunity to teach some new skills. So sorry about that.
Okay, I was just putting the hat on the engagement talk. So I think, engagement is the hot topic right now. And so I do want to encourage you to go into it with an inquiry mindset, do some planning, collaborate with some colleagues, try it out, see what works. I really want to encourage you to invite a colleague that can just be an observer, right? To not have to lead the Zoom so that they can observe. I think we need to think about what does engagement look like. I know that some of the feedback we get from parents is that, well, they're not sitting there, they're not staring at the screen. And we know from a classroom standpoint, that's not always what engagement looks like. Right? We know that kids, I can have a kid who's barrel rolling down the carpet. It's not ideal, but they can still pay attention sometimes, right? So we need to think about what does that look like? How are we communicating that to parents? And how are we partnering with parents to get that feedback from home in this area and work together? Because it's not just like a teacher-student thing. We've got this third piece now, which is whatever environment they're in. It might be at home, it might be in a community center, it might be elsewhere, right? They might be home by themselves. So we have to really think about that environment as that third teacher, third piece.
And this is where we have to be intentional planners for this, right? Think about how much time we've spent across the last couple of years talking about flexible seating and being able to stand and do your work, or, turn around your chair, or lots of different ways that kids walk and read or do all of these different things. We've learned about this. We know that this is a good way for kids' bodies to learn, but now we're either teaching families, caregivers, or kids why this is a good mode, and we're giving them ways to do that, right? So we might even have a quick list early in that start of the school year. There are 4 ways that you can interact with your body, right? You can stand and work, you can sit and work, you can lay on your belly and work, whatever that piece might look like as well.
Yeah, love that. Other thoughts, other questions? I'm just looking at the chat a little bit. And yeah, I noticed someone mentioned that responding in the chat can be tricky, especially for middle schoolers. That is definitely true. Our middle schoolers, I think we need to treat them as if we would treat our first graders, in that we really have to establish some clear guidelines and accountability measures. But it's definitely worth exploring, because I've seen them do it. And I always point to our colleague, Sarah Ahmed, who we taught with for many years. And Sarah taught middle school, and she did it brilliantly. And I think that, she would say the same thing. I hope that, I agree. It's challenging, and let's try it. Let's have a go and see what
And
happens, and
yeah, and I think,
troubleshoot it together.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you, but I also think it's this piece of like, let's ask them, right? Like, where do we offer them some choice and some opportunity as well? Because like, maybe if we just say, write something in a chat, like that's really big. But if we can say, okay, so today you can respond, way A, way B, or way C. What do you guys want? Like, what's a good way for you to respond? And start getting some ideas that maybe both parties are happy with and can use as one of those tools for engagement, right? It could even be as simple as today during our conversation, I want you to create a sketch note, right? A sketch note is a nonlinear way to take notes. It's more refined than just drawing and writing, but it's pictures to communicate ideas paired with short nuggets of text. And so we could say, okay, so as we're learning today, respond in your sketch note, take a photo of that, and then you're going to turn that in later in the day. So that will give me an understanding of where you were in our conversation and where you were in the thinking during that period of time.
Yeah. And just to respond to another comment, I know that a couple people were asking about, ELL students, emergent bilingual students. And what I would say is that all of this definitely works. I think that really relying on your visuals is extremely important. And just, reading the room and having those check-ins with kids to see, because I think one of the things that this is probably a whole nother Facebook Live topic, but this idea of like formative assessment, right? Like, how am I, and I'm not even going to get into grading because that's like too much for my brain right now, but like this idea of how do I know what's happening on the other side of the screen? Like, how do I know how kids are engaging and what they're understanding? And so I think having those quick check-ins, and it can be simple things like Kristen saying, like draw, do a sketch note and snap a picture and put it on Seesaw, or hold it up for me to check, or, do this Google form exit ticket. Like, there's a lot of different ways. I think the key with that is to make them short and frequent, because that by the time, by the time they get to like an end of thing assessment, whatever it is typically too late. Right. We're like, oh shoot, and I've had those moments, so I can say that. But I just think that, yeah, like those visuals are really, really important.
I think for language learners too, and any child who might need some additional supports, it goes back to like those good strategies are oftentimes even more important for students that might need those support pieces. So if we like strip down all the layers and talk about, okay, like I have to get started with students, what do I start with, right? So for example, we're video conferencing, right? We can also use, if you're using Google Meet, you can ask your students to turn on closed captions, right? So the closed captions button will caption everything that you are speaking in live time when your student turns it on, right? So here we go. We're adding another layer for interaction and for learning. They're watching us, they're listening. They can also read and speak. We can keep that recording and provide it in another format for students. The other tool that I'm finding to be really helpful, and this works with Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, is a Chrome extension called Mote, M-O-T-E. Mote allows you to leave audio comments to students. And so when we think about how do we give feedback for developing readers, developing writers, this is a huge piece, because reading comment after comment isn't always the best tool, but when you can hear a child, when they can hear you giving that just in time feedback, right? Like that's what we're looking to do here, is go to really good instructional feedback. And so you can speak it. Moat will leave an audio file as your comment, and will also transcribe whatever you said into print. So now they go in the comment, they can read what you said, they can listen to what you said as well. So those are big tools. If we're going back to just starting simple, you have a video conference, right? You have a read aloud. You bring kids to paper and pencil. You might have your math manipulatives or things that you might do with wordplay or word work. And that's your first couple of days, right? Video conference, go with that. Keep it short and simple. Keep it clear for families and for students to know where to go. Give some maybe support to caregivers, and then we video conference. And then maybe the next tool we add is Seesaw. And then we do all of these things with Seesaw as a way to respond. And I know many people think Seesaw is a tool for typically elementary age learners. I always recommend it pre-K through 8th grade, because I think it's just such an easy way to capture response and to amplify engagement. And now it just dovetails really nicely with Google Classroom. And so you just pop it in and use it through Classroom. So those would be my getting started pieces, if you're not sure exactly where to begin with this.
Yeah, I love that. I think
Other questions?
a final thought that I have, just sort of building on what you were saying, is, we need to make sure that things are streamlined for students and caregivers. They need one place to go, whatever that one place is, whether it's your LMS system, or it's like, I know in our district, we've been using a Google, we have an LMS, but teachers use like a Google Doc, and it's all set up. Like, here's the subject, here's the link, here's the thing. It's just this one page, because a lot of, kids who are home with family members, they might have multiple children in the house. Children who are middle school and high school age are juggling like many teachers. I know, some children are with grandparents who, or people who maybe are not as tech savvy. And again, we do have children who are showing up, and, they are home by themselves, or they are somewhere.
Or they're running the education programs for their younger siblings too.
Yes,
we have to, I think, not only view this as an inquiry, but I think we have to lead with empathy as we go about this, and really look to what are kids showing us, right? Like Katie and I talk so much about multimedia literacy and visual literacy specifically. This is an exercise in visual literacy. What are they showing us? And then, is what they're showing us giving information? And 9 times out of 10, it is about their well-being, their health, their capacity for learning, the support that they might need as a next step. And all of those little feedback nuggets are what we're constantly going back to and reflecting on. This is an opportunity to be a more responsive teacher than we've ever had to be before.
Yeah. And I think we can look at this as, I think it's very easy to get stressed out and overwhelmed right now. And so a couple of things that I want to say to that. First of all, you cannot carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Okay. We have to open up. We have to help each other. We have to be open to accepting help, both in our professional and our personal lives. Especially for those of us who are managing children at home and also trying to manage a full-time job. There are some things we just have to let go, and that's okay. I want to acknowledge that. We need to collaborate and share, and don't reinvent the wheel, right? I think that's so important, and just care for each other. Acknowledge that we are all, we're doing this, and it's hard, and that's okay. At the same time, I think if we don't lament what we're losing or missing out on, and we have a spirit of inquiry and a spirit of wonder, that's going to carry us through this year. And we say to ourselves, okay, yeah, this is not ideal. And what can we learn this year that's going to take us forward as professionals? So I want to share one last slide, and Kristen, you can talk a little bit about the bullet points here.
Yeah.
Just some upcoming things that we've got.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say. You know, Katie was just wrapping with like, we need to reach out, we need to help each other, we need to reach out for support when we need it. And that's what Katie and I want you to know, that we are here to support you. We have a number of upcoming things that can, you know, provide you just in time learning. If you need something right now in terms of lessons, our book, Read the World, has 38 lessons that are ready to teach right now with students. So if you're thinking about, oh my goodness, where do I start on some of this digital work? There's 38 right there. There's another 20 plus in Amplify. And so if you're looking and saying, okay, where can I find 60 lessons to teach to start the year? Both of those books have those. One thing that's coming out from Heinemann in the next little bit here is we've done a crosswalk of lessons from both books, if you have them, of here's where you can find XYZ, right? If you're looking to have kids start figuring out what it looks like on a video call to have an interactive conversation, we've got you covered with that. If you're looking at how do I get kids to capture thinking in a one-way student conference, we've got you covered with that. And that's coming out in the next little bit. We have relaunched our digital and distance learning website. And so Jacqueline, I think, has dropped that link. We'll drop it again for you if you need it. Please check out that page, as all of the graphics that we've shared tonight will be posted there. Anything new that we're thinking of will also be shared there. I have an upcoming webinar that I'm doing with my brother, Kirk Semke, who is a student wellness specialist, on social emotional learning. And so if you go to our website and click sign up for our email list, we'll get you an email on the date and the time for that, which should be a week from now, next Monday, the 31st. Katie and I also have a virtual course coming up. We have a webinar series with Heinemann that's beginning October 1st, and we are super excited about that. And then our books will be on sale with Heinemann. So if you're like, oh yeah, those lessons sound great, but I don't have the book, it's going to be an opportunity to get that for a big discount coming up. So lots of great things coming through our publisher at Heinemann. And then anything else will be updated on our distance learning website.
We're everywhere. We'll be showing up at your family socially distanced barbecue.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing that I wanted to say too, if you have read our books, or if you found them helpful, if you could give us a short little, 6-word review on Amazon, that would be really helpful for us as well. So thank you guys so much. Please let us know what you need. We're available on social media all of the time.
All the time. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to both of you. I'm sure that everyone listening is just both like inspired and overwhelmed by the knowledge that they share. But I mean, really, truly, this is the experience, the depth of experience that you need to succeed in this time. And I'm just really grateful. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Katie, for putting your knowledge in paper on a screen and sharing it digitally here. I am continuing to pop links in the chat with the various things that you just mentioned, with the webinar series and their distance learning site and their books. So please continue to access them as a resource, because they are in the trenches with you right now. And they have been doing this for a long time. So wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night and have a great day tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Be kind to yourself.
Yes.
Be kind to yourself.